Hello, All Souls, and welcome to this week's online worship. It's good to be with you again. You'll notice some changes to worship this week. Due to stay-at-home orders in the DC metropolitan region, my fellow worship leaders and I are each recording from our own homes instead of at church. One exception to this is the music. Over the last month, our music team had the foresight to record some songs in our sanctuary that we could share with you in upcoming services. This week and going forward, you'll see our musicians singing together in the sanctuary. Please know that this music was recorded earlier in March. Even though this service will have a slightly different feel from the last several, and though we're still a long way from worshiping together again in our beautiful sanctuary, please know that whatever this pandemic brings, your church community will continue to be here for you, with worship, pastoral care, resources for families with children, and opportunities to serve one another in the larger community. And just as we will continue to be here for you, we hope that you will continue to be here for the church. With in-person worship canceled, a large portion of the church's regular income stream has been disrupted. We understand that many of your lives have been financially disrupted too, and that not everyone can make a financial gift to the church right now. And that's okay. All the more reason for those of us who are able to please support the church and its ministry right now. I invite you to please consider making a one-time or recurring gift to the church today. Simply click the donate button at the top of our homepage and follow the simple instructions for online giving. You may also text a gift by texting ASCU to 73256. And you can always mail a check to the church as well. I want to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart for your generosity to the church in this time of great need. Friends, I really hope you find this week's worship meaningful and helpful to you. At this time, you may want to get your home chalice ready to light as I turn things over to Reverend Rob Keithan to share our chalice lighting and opening prayer.
Hello, all souls. Now's the time for our chalice lighting. If you have a home chalice, I invite you to get it out. On one of my last walks with my daughters before the shelter-in-place order, we were at the marina just south of National Airport, walking through a row of boats laying on the ground, and under one of them was a man who looked like he might not be okay. So just walked over and said, "Hi." And he looked up, smiled a big smile, and said, "I'm just watching some paint dry." And so I know many of us are feeling restless, anxious, powerless in this challenging time, but I invite us also and light our chalice in the spirit of acceptance. I want to share our pastoral prayers this morning. First, a prayer for all who are quarantined today, who have been for a long time. We're with you, we love you, we care for you. We have several specific prayers to lift up as well. I'm very sorry to bear the news that Herb Lowry died in Atlanta earlier this week. So our prayers are with Janet and their extended family and community as we mourn Herb's loss. Prayers also for Delabian Rice Thurston, who found out this week that her younger sister Deborah tested positive for COVID-19. And our prayers are also with Mark Hicks, who learned this week that his brother, Michael, died of the COVID-19 virus. Delabian, Mark, your families and friends, our love and prayers are with you all. And finally, some good news from our community. We are grateful to rejoice with Erica and Tom Look on the birth of their son Dominic earlier this week. Prayers of health and strength and life for little Dominic and Tom and Erica as they embark on parenthood. I invite you now, in a moment that follows, to speak aloud the names of those that you carry on your heart this morning. Spirit of life and of love, God that we know by so many names, be with us in this time. Be with us in this time of uncertainty and remind us that we are not the first, nor will we be the last to face the unknown. Remind us, O God of love and of resilience, that we will find a way through, that we have strength beyond knowing, that we have love beyond knowing, and that we have each other today and in the weeks and months to come, whatever happens, however long it happens. We have each other, and that will be enough. Amen.
how's my hair look? You look fine. You look fine. Oh, good morning. You can see that I have a friend here with me to tell the story today. Do you want to introduce yourself? Yeah, I'd love to. Hi, I'm Nathan, and you are all the good people of All Souls, right? Yep, you got that right. Are you ready to start? Mm-hmm. So the month's theme for April is liberation. Liberation? What is that? Liberation is getting free from being treated unfairly. Oh, okay, that's good. Yes, it is. Are you ready to start now? Yeah. A long time ago, there was once a wise king who ruled over the town of Atri. Atri? Where's Atri? It's in Italy. Oh, Italy. Okay. So there was nothing that this king wanted more than for his town to be known for its justice. Wow, that sounds like that'd be a really cool place to live. That's what the king thought too. So he built a huge bell tower in the center of town. He put an enormous bell in it and a long cord to pull it with. He gathered all the people of the town and made this announcement. He said, what? I want to do it. I think I know. Okay, go ahead. Hear ye, all ye good people of Atri. That's in Italy. Yeah, I know. I have built this tower for you. Anyone may ring this bell anytime, but you only ring it if you feel that you have been treated unfairly. Is that right? Yes, that's right. That's exactly what he said. He said he would appoint a team of judges. When the judges heard the bell, they would come running. They'd get all the people involved and they'd try to work it out. Maybe they would find a way to right the wrong. Maybe they'd think of a way to keep that wrong from happening again. Yeah, sounds like a great idea. He said that he wanted all the people in his town to feel that they've been treated justly. He said they would call this bell, oh, I know, what? The bell of justice. That's right. So at first, the bell got rung often. Maybe if someone in the town was greedy or someone was being treated with inequality. Oh, it's terrible. Yes, it is. So, but after a while, people got a little tired of using the bell. You see, it took some time to meet with the judges, and it wasn't always fun. No, I would think not. No. So, after a while, people started settling their own disputes. Even the thought of the bell kept some arguments from happening. Wow. So, after a while, believe it or not, everybody started treating each other with more kindness. So the bell worked. Yes, it did. But since it was never being used, the cord got all frayed and luscious green vines grew up out of the ground and got tangled with the cord. Aw, that's too bad. Oh, but wait, there's more. Oh, okay. Around the same time that the tower was being built, an old knight came home from years of battle. He and his horse had been considered heroes. But after he started settling into his new life in the countryside, he forgot about his old faithful horse. It's true. The horse was neglected. It became weak and hungry. It's terrible, I know. One day, the knight went to the horse and said, "You're of no use to me anymore," and he kicked him out of the barn. No, it can't be. It's true, it happened. Oh. So the poor hungry animal roamed the countryside looking for food. Eventually, it made its way into the town square. And there it saw those luscious green vines growing around the cord. And it started munching on those vines. And what do you think happened? The bell started to ring. It sure did. Well, everyone came running. It had been so long since they'd heard the bell. They recognized the horse which was used to be treated fairly by the knight. The judges sent for the knight. He had no explanation for his cruel behavior. The judges told him that this animal was demanding justice and it deserved it. Right. So they told the knight that he had to take the horse back home, give it a clean stall, fresh water, and good food. The knight was very sorry for what he had done. Well, he should have been, and he was. And so he stayed true to his word, and he kept that horse and treated it kindly for all the rest of its days. May the bell of justice ring on! Good job. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
56 years ago, on Good Friday, 1964, the people of Alaska suffered a terrible earthquake. The 9.2 magnitude quake shook the state for 4.5 minutes and triggered tsunamis with waves 200 feet tall. Countless homes and buildings were destroyed, infrastructure crumbled, an entire seaside neighborhood plunged into the water. All told, the quake killed more than 100 people and injured hundreds more. Now here's a curious thing. A day after the quake, the Department of Defense sent a team of sociologists to study how Alaskans were responding to the disaster. Why? Well, it was the height of the Cold War, and the DoD was trying to understand how people reacted to disasters so they could model human behavior in the event of a nuclear Armageddon. Their premise was that in the face of disaster, human behavior would descend into chaos, selfishness, and desperation. But when the sociologists showed up in Alaska the day after the quake, they discovered something quite different. People had already organized themselves into search and rescue teams. Volunteers were tending to the injured and sheltering and feeding the displaced. The sociologists returned to Alaska several times over the next year, interviewing more than 500 people. They concluded that in a disaster, human beings have a tendency to respond with mutual aid, compassion, and perseverance, rather than selfishness and desperation. Studies of disaster responses since have borne out these conclusions. Maybe we are better than we sometimes give ourselves credit for. Now, as the Defense Department speculated on how folks might respond to great tragedies, I wonder if they ever consulted the book of Exodus. I doubt it, but maybe they should have. The Exodus story, which will be retold in Jewish homes all over the world this week during Passover, is one of the greatest stories ever told about a people collectively overcoming the obstacles that they face. It's the story of how the Israelite people, enslaved under Pharaoh, won their freedom and eventually made their way to a place they could call home, a fabled land of milk and honey, a promised land where they would be enslaved no more. During this pandemic, I'm finding deep resonance with the Exodus story because I think it offers us some lessons in how together we can overcome the great challenges we face as a people. Whether it's this pandemic or the even greater threat of global climate change. So how did the Israelite people make it through? Well, it wasn't easy. And many of us know only the very beginning of the story, the dramatic part where Pharaoh's army traps the escaping Israelites against the shores of the Red Sea. And just when it seems all hope is lost, God intervenes by parting the sea's water and letting his people pass through. Little did the Israelites know then that the hardest part was still to come. What followed was a 40-year journey through a desert wilderness before they could reach the promised land. And over the course of those 40 years, sometimes facing drought and famine, the people did some of the things you might expect them to do. They quarreled and fought with one another. They complained and second-guessed their leaders. Some of them even went so far as to say, you know what? Let's go back to Egypt. We weren't free, but at least we knew what life was like back there. But eventually the people did arrive in their promised land. And here's how. The Israelites made it through because they understood themselves to be a people bound in covenant with one another. Their religious heritage had equipped them with a covenantal understanding of being human, and understanding that their lives were deeply interconnected and interdependent, and that they were responsible for one another. God had been trying to teach this lesson to the Israelites for generations, but it really didn't sink in until they faced this crisis of their wilderness journey, and it was impossible to ignore anymore that their lives were inextricably bound in covenant. I'm pretty sure the people of Alaska didn't go to bed on the night before that earthquake thinking about how interconnected their lives were. But when they walked out into a world transformed by that disaster, then they knew. And they behaved accordingly. They didn't need to be told what to do. They didn't need to have the covenant spelled out for them in writing. It was something they knew intuitively, something they felt deep in their bones. Find and tend to the wounded. Bury the dead. Shelter and feed the homeless. They knew that they were one people, bound in covenant, responsible for one another. Friends, I feel that same spirit dawning in us now. For better or worse, this pandemic is helping us discover, not just intellectually, but in our bodies, that our lives are interconnected, that we are responsible for one another, that our lives are literally in one another's hands. And while we need the help of experts to teach and remind us how exactly to care for one another, the understanding that we must is something we grasp deep down. This pandemic has helped me realize that covenant, at its deepest level, isn't just some sort of rules about how we treat each other. It's a reality into which we are born, an ontological truth about the interconnectedness of our lives. For us, the task isn't to create the covenant. It's to discover the reality of the covenant, to feel it deeply in our hearts and our bodies, and then to behave accordingly. One other lesson for these times that I'm taking from the Exodus story is this. The Israelite people never once harbored the illusion that they would be delivered, that they would be saved from their predicament alone. From the very beginning, they were clear-headed about the fact that you don't survive a 40-year journey through the wilderness on your own. They knew that the only way to get to the promised land is hand in hand. This idea that our fate, our salvation, is collective rather than individual runs against so much thinking in the West. Both Christianity and capitalism, as practiced today, teach us that our salvation is a private affair, even a self-interested affair. But that kind of thinking is not going to solve the enormous problems that we face as a global community. That's not going to get us to our promised land. When we survive this pandemic, it'll be because we survived it together. And if we're going to escape the worst outcomes of climate change, it'll be because we do it together. Our fates, our salvation, are all bound up together. They say if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We have a long way to go, friends. We better go together. Finally, I want to return to something I spoke about from the pulpit a few weeks ago on the first Sunday in March. Feels like a lifetime ago. That morning, I set before you an affirmation spoken many years ago by the Unitarian leader William Ellery Channing, who said that despite our failings and shortcomings as human beings, despite the low expectations that so many, like the Department of Defense, hold for the human race, he said, "I thank God that my lot is bound up with that of the human race." And a month ago, I asked you, if you could make that same affirmation, can you say, I thank God that my lot is bound up with that of the human race? And then this pandemic hit, and we discovered that whether we're thankful for it or not, our lots are bound together. But it makes a difference whether we embrace this truth or not. It made a difference to those Alaskans recovering from the earthquake. It made a difference to the Israelites on their long wilderness journey. So this morning, I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say one more time that I do thank God that my lot is bound up with that of the human race. And I hope you do too. And I pray that we find the wisdom and courage to act from that affirmation. And friends, I thank God especially that my lot is bound up with all of you. Be well, dear friends. Amen.
As we close our service today, I want to invite everyone to contribute an offering to continue the ongoing work and ministry of All Souls Church. We're committed to paying all of our staff, including our hourly building staff, throughout the shelter-in-place orders as long as they hold. And the loss of revenue from not holding worship in person is significant. So if you're able to give online or via text, your generosity is appreciated. Now it's time to extinguish our chalice. Eleanor, will you blow out our chalice? I close with these words from Reverend Sarah Moores York. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and, renewed by their grace, move boldly into the